Process 3 is the merger process for bridge replacement projects that are processed as categorical exclusions. Module 10 will cover all steps in Merger Process 3. Process 3 is the least complex of the merger processes. If the project is a replace-in-place only bridge project in existing right-of-way and with an off-site detour, then involvement in the merger process should not be needed. A bridge replacement project may be placed in merger if an individual permit is required, or it is likely to impact two or more of resources such as wetlands, buffer rules, Coastal Area Management Act or CAMA areas of environmental concern, threatened and endangered species, Section 4F, Section 106, environmental justice concerns, a high degree of public controversy, a high number of relocations, and/or compelling reasons to maintain traffic on-site. In practice, bridge projects that go through the merger process are generally the ones that are more complex. Examples include Bonner Bridge, B2500, which was evaluated in an environmental impact statement, and the Surf City Bridge, B4929, which was evaluated in an EA. Due to the complexity of both of these projects, Process 3 was not the appropriate merger process for the projects, as they required more coordination and involvement with the merger team. This slide depicts a snapshot of the specific steps associated with Process 3. Process 3 represents an abbreviated merger process compared to Processes 1 and 2, with fewer steps and concurrence points. A bridge replacement project is initiated with an obvious need, which is the replacement of a deficient structure, with the major decisions being where and how to replace the structure. A notice of intent and purpose and need statement are not required on typical bridge replacement projects. If either an environmental impact statement is planned or becomes necessary later in the study process, or the purpose and need for the project is in question, then the project should be moved into Process 1 or 2 as appropriate. Because the need for the proposed bridge replacement project is predefined, Process 3 does not include a concurrence point 1 step. Instead, the proposed project begins with 5 introductory steps leading up to a combined Concurrence Point 2-2A meeting, bridging decisions, and alignment review. These 5 steps are identical to other introductory steps discussed in Processes 1 and 2. In Process 3, Steps 1 and 2 are generally handled concurrently. The intent of the Concurrence Point 2-2A meeting for Process 3 is to obtain consensus from the project team on which replacement options will be fully evaluated as alternatives in the categorical exclusion. Options to consider include closure without replacement, no build, rehabilitation, replace in place with off-site detour, replace in place with on-site detour, either side of existing bridge, replace on new alignment, either side of existing bridge, and others as determined by the project situation and the project team. Information that should be presented at the Concurrence Point 2-2A meeting may include Natural Systems Technical Report, Phase 1 Historic Property Evaluation and Boundaries of Known Listed and Potentially Eligible Historic Sites, Community Profile including existing and future land use, Comments from the local government, Traffic flow and/or access concerns, Safety concerns, potential utility impacts, and aerial photography and digital terrain mapping. Wetland and stream delineations, NCDWQ wetland ratings and wetland type, and any CAMA areas of environmental concern will also be identified. If recommended by the NCDOT, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and FHWA, then the concurrence meeting can be held on-site to review preliminary design alternatives, review any potential mitigation sites, including causeway removal opportunities, and review recommendations for bridging decision, including bridge length. This concurrence point should include discussions of structure type, bridge, culvert, or others, and appropriate bridge length or culvert size, utility relocations, and any other design elements considered a necessary part of the project. Construction methodologies, access, and other issues should also be discussed. After Concurrence Point 2, 2A, and prior to the combined Concurrence Point 3 and 4A meeting, if determined appropriate by the NCDOT project engineer, a public meeting or other form of public involvement activity can be scheduled. At the public meeting, aerial photography showing all replacement alternatives brought forward from Concurrence Point 2, 2A will be presented for public review and comments. A newsletter announcing the meeting and a handout at the meeting will describe the alternatives under consideration and invite comments. Any typical section or structure type alternatives identified at Concurrence Point 2, 2A should be noted to gain public comments. At the Concurrence Point 3, 4A meeting for Process 3, the project team will concur on the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative, or LEDPA, and avoidance and minimization. At this time, project team members will be reasonably certain that the LEDPA will comply with all relevant regulations and permit requirements and can be authorized. The project team will also address issues such as alignment shifts, horizontal and vertical alignment, slopes, potential utility conflicts, and construction techniques. In the event agreement on Concurrence Point 3 and subsequently Concurrence Point 4A cannot be reached, a follow-up meeting will be held. A Concurrence Point 4B meeting is not expected unless the project is to convert a bridge to a culvert or an individual permit is required. The informational packet for Concurrence Point 3, 4A will include a matrix illustrating a comparison of impacts for the detailed study alternatives and a brief summary of previous project team decisions. The packet will also include a summary of substantive comments received from agencies and the public and how these comments were addressed. At this point, there are a few more steps in Process 3 since there is no 4B meeting. In Step 9, the categorical exclusion, or CE, and a conceptual mitigation proposal is prepared. The categorical exclusion will be completed according to appropriate regulations, and an identification of impacts will be made for each of the alternatives that were studied in detail. The CE will discuss the rationale for the selection of the LEDPA. NCDOT will address potential on-site compensatory mitigation options and may arrange an agency field meeting to review any potential on-site mitigation opportunities, discuss the environmental evaluation results, and determine which sites are acceptable to the agencies. The Ecosystem Enhancement Program, or EEP, will provide all compensatory mitigation that is not satisfied by acceptable on-site mitigation. The FHWA and NCDOT will review the environmental document for adequacy as it relates to appropriate requirements. Preliminary determinations about the federal, state, and local environmental statutes and regulations that may apply to the LEDPA will be included within this final environmental document. If the project is within the 20 CAMA counties, then potentially relevant CAMA land use plan policies that may apply to the LEDPA will also be included within the CE. Step 10 of Process 3 is the issuance of the categorical exclusion. NCDOT and FHWA will sign the title page of the CE, and project team members will be provided a copy. Step 11 is an optional design public hearing. NCDOT may choose to hold a design public hearing. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and other team members will be invited to attend the public hearing. Team members are encouraged to attend the public hearing to fully understand the public concerns. In Steps 12 and 13 of Process 3, right-of-way plans are developed and completed for the project. After selection of the LEDPA, final surveys and plan sheets will be prepared for the development of the right-of-way plans. After the design engineers complete the horizontal and vertical alignment refinement, the hydraulics unit begins the development of the proposed drainage design, and the geotechnical unit begins the detailed geotechnical investigations for the project. The design engineers will develop the right-of-way plans following the alignment that was agreed upon at Concurrence Point 3, 4A. The Utilities section will coordinate the determination of the utility conflicts and the development of the utility relocation preliminary designs with the utility owners and the design engineers. Upon receiving the completed hydraulic design for the project, NCDOT design engineers incorporate the hydraulic design and establish the proposed right-of-way limits for the project. The structure design engineers begin to develop the designs for bridges and culverts. The project is then reviewed with construction, utilities, and right-of-way personnel to note any additional changes that may be required. The right-of-way plans are completed and sent to the right-of-way branch to begin the purchase of land required for the project. Step 14 involves a Division of Coastal Management on-site pre-application meeting if one is required for the project. For projects within the 20 CAMA or Coastal Area Management Act counties that require a CAMA major permit, NCDOT staff will request an on-site pre-application meeting with the appropriate North Carolina Division of Coastal Management field representative. The purpose of this meeting is to review the plans and/or permit drawings and information that will be submitted with the CAMA permit application. This will ensure that when the CAMA major permit application is formally submitted, it contains all of the information necessary for processing. The purpose of this meeting is not to make changes to the project design, construction methodology, or construction timeframe. Any potential changes to the project identified at this on-site pre-application meeting will be discussed with the full project team at the Concurrence Point 4C meeting prior to approval. When the hydraulic design is 100% complete and the permit drawings for the project are finalized, the hydraulics unit will hold a Concurrence Point 4C meeting. The agenda for this meeting is the same as the Process 1 and 2 4C meeting and will include items such as presenting copies of the Stormwater Management Plan and reviewing the final permit drawings for the permit application. Again, any changes to impacts to wetlands, streams, buffers, or CAMA areas of environmental concern that occur after Concurrence Point 4C is signed will require the resource agencies to revisit the design and may require a new 4C meeting. Note that non-merger bridge projects can utilize the coordination provided by Concurrence Point 4B and 4C reviews. This can be very helpful when there are Section 7 issues with listed aquatic species, for example, mussels. The steps after the Concurrence Point 4C meeting leading up to the completion of the project are the same as discussed for Processes 1 and 2, starting with Step 16, compensatory mitigation requirements through receiving a permit decision in Step 20. The final plans are completed, after which the project is let for construction. And finally, compliance monitoring and project completion. Process 3 Steps 16 through 26 can be reviewed in more detail in Module 12, Post Concurrence Point 4C, Project Completion.